Coming up next, an 18-year-old accused of killing another teen at a house party makes his first court appearance.
A gang responsible for breaking into high-end homes may be back at it again.
A South Bay doctor charged with involuntary manslaughter because one of his patients died during surgery. He still has his license, and the state says he doesn't have to tell you he's facing a criminal charge.
The USS Portland returns to San Diego with the Orion space capsule. I'll take you on board the ship.
And one day after the capture of Southern California's most famous mountain lion, an update tonight on the health of P-22. CBS 8 News Live at 6 starts now.
Out-of-control teenagers at a party in Chula Vista last month led to fights and a 17-year-old being stabbed to death. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Carlo Cicchetto.
I'm Marcella Lee. New information came out in court today where an 18-year-old pleaded not guilty to murder. CBS 8's David Godfredson was there and heard police found several witnesses and video recorded at the scene.
Not guilty plea denial of any and all allegations accepted for the defendant James Mumper Jr.
The judge ordered us not to show the 18-year-old defendant's face in Chula Vista court. James Mumper Jr. pleaded not guilty Tuesday to stabbing 17-year-old Mateo Castillo to death at a party in Chula Vista on November 12th. I obtained this arrest warrant where officers say they have surveillance video showing Mumper at the party and a witness who heard Mumper saying, quote, "I stabbed him, I stabbed him."
Several witnesses observed the defendant significantly intoxicated, was acting belligerent, aggressive, confrontational, and threatening.
Deputy District Attorney Garrett Wong said the party broke up around 12:45 a.m. That's when a fight broke out on the front driveway involving a partygoer and an acquaintance of the defendant. The victim then tried to break up that fight, according to the prosecutor.
The defendant then squared up with the victim and stabbed the victim one time in the abdomen. The victim immediately lifted up his shirt, exclaimed that he had been stabbed, and unfortunately passed away from his injuries a few minutes later at the scene.
Mumper also is charged with assaulting another partygoer with a knife, but that person survived. I spoke to the defendant's father outside of court. He did not want to talk on camera, but he said his son acted in self-defense after he was attacked by other partygoers in the driveway.
The actual stabbing itself, at this time, we don't have video surveillance or any video of the stabbing itself.
If convicted on all counts, this 18-year-old defendant faces 27 years to life. He'll be back in court on February 22nd. At the Chula Vista Courthouse, David Godfredson, CBS 8.
Thank you, David. Chula Vista police are asking for the public's help finding a man they say is connected to a fatal shooting back in October. Angel Bojorquez has been named a person of interest in the killing of Eduardo Villaseñor October 26th. Police say Bojorquez is in his early to mid-20s and has ties to San Diego, Chula Vista, and Tijuana. He's about 5'8", has a medium build with short hair. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers. Tonight, San Diego police say they've busted an organized crime ring with ties to the Mexican mafia. Officers arrested 7 people last week at multiple raids throughout the county. One raid was on Wonderland Avenue in Encanto. They're calling that location the Crime Den. They say the group planned crimes there like murder and kidnapping. They also found a stash of guns, drugs, $28,000 in cash, and 2 stolen cars.
A local doctor charged with involuntary manslaughter is still practicing medicine in the South Bay. And despite the serious allegation against him, his medical license was just renewed. CBS 8's Steve Price has the latest on this case and is working for you, looking into the system that keeps important information hidden from other patients.
Dr. Carlos Chacon, the owner of Divino Plastic Surgery, is currently facing a charge of involuntary manslaughter because one of his patients died after surgery.
The state's medical board says he committed repeated negligent acts, but he still has his license, and he doesn't have to tell future patients that he's currently facing criminal charges.
Megan Espinoza came to Divino in December of 2018 to have breast augmentation surgery. She was given anesthesia without a licensed anesthesiologist at the facility. According to legal documents, she became pulseless and suffered sudden cardiac arrest. Dr. Chacon started CPR, but Megan remained unconscious. Instead of calling 911, he called two anesthesiologists for advice. But according to the documents, he concealed from each anesthesiologist pertinent facts, including that patient A was comatose and suffered cardiac arrest. Finally, more than 3 hours after Megan's surgery took a horrific turn, the clinic called 911. Megan never regained consciousness and later died at the hospital.
That's outrageous.
Carmen Balber is very familiar with this case. As executive director of Consumer Watchdog, she works to improve patient safety.
Patients should not have to fear that the doctor they're going to see, whose record looks clean, is in fact a threat to their safety.
So, working for you, we asked Carmen how a patient can research their doctor's history. Unfortunately, current state laws are not on your side. Carmen says doctors are not required to tell patients if they're facing criminal charges for causing medical harm. And it can take years for the state medical board to complete an investigation, meaning the doctor can keep practicing medicine with no marks on their record.
Californians should have the right to know if their doctor is currently under investigation for causing the death of another patient, for sexual misconduct with a patient, for causing serious lifelong harm, and we don't have that right.
This past summer, 3.5 years after Megan's death, the Accreditation Association for Ambulatory Healthcare revoked Davino's accreditation, meaning they can no longer do any surgeries that require anesthesia. But Davino's website still lists several procedures that require anesthesia. CBS 8 reached out to the clinic and Dr. Chacon's lawyers, but they did not respond to our request for a comment. Meanwhile, Dr. Chacon still has his medical license. In fact, it was just recently renewed for another 2 years. His preliminary hearing on the involuntary manslaughter charge is scheduled for March. Megan's family is also suing for civil damages and appears close to finalizing a $1 million settlement. In Bonita, Steve Price, CBS 8.
Thanks so much, Steve. And don't forget, here at CBS 8, we are working for you. If there's something you'd like us to look into, email us at workingforyou@cbs8.com. County Board of Supervisors Chair Nathan Fletcher is endorsing Vice Chair Nora Vargas as his successor. At today's meeting, Fletcher said he would not seek a third one-year term as chairman. He said he would like to nominate Vargas when the board reorganizes on January 10th. Fletcher will remain on the board as District 4 Supervisor. Also today, the board agreed to new tools and programs to fight the fentanyl crisis with money from settled lawsuits with opioid manufacturers.
When you think of paid family leave, you may think of a new mom or dad taking time off for their new baby.
But California's paid family leave allows people to take time off from work to care for loved ones in a medical emergency. As our political reporter Morgan Reiner tells us, this is now the focus of a Stanford University study.
You know the saying, as goes California, so goes the nation. California was the very first state to pass paid family leave nearly 2 decades ago, and since then, 11 states and D.C. have followed suit. This new Stanford study examines the significant impact of those programs, a program that's set to expand.
Catherine Witchett is an attorney at Legal Aid Work, a nonprofit in San Francisco which provides free legal services for workers.
So we get over 1,000 calls on our work and family helpline every year. And generally their questions are, how can I take time off to take care of my spouse who is going through chemo or to bond with my brand new baby?
She said California makes answering that question easy. You do have a right to take time off. You do have a right to return to work afterwards.
So that they know they're not just asking for a favor to be able to take time off because they're pregnant, or asking to take time off to bond with their new child isn't a kindness from their employer, but it's something that they have the right to.
Maya Rawson-Slater is an associate professor of health policy at Stanford University and one of the authors of the new study.
We find that access to state-level paid family leave allows the wives, the healthy wives of these individuals that experience health events, to keep working. So they're much less likely to report leaving their jobs for the purposes of caring for family.
10% of women nationally do not return to work when they have to care for a loved one in a medical emergency. In California,
the exact number is 7 percentage point reduction in the likelihood that they leave their jobs.
California's paid family leave program is set to expand again in 2025. Lower income workers will get to keep 90% of their paycheck when they take time off, as opposed to the current 60 to 70%.
I asked about what happens to that 10% of women who decide to leave their jobs. The Stanford study told me that they do not continue to follow those women after they make that decision. But Ross and Slater did tell me there's already a handful of studies out there that show that paid family leave does equal financial stability. So she said it's safe to assume that for many of that 10% of women who have to leave their jobs, many of them will face financial hardships.
Great tool for people to have in times of need.
Absolutely.
Still ahead tonight, a huge milestone for the LGBTQ community as President Biden signs the Respect for Marriage Act into law.
Plus, just days after it splashed down off the coast of Baja, NASA's Orion space capsule arrives here in San Diego.
Mostly clear skies and chilly temperatures as we hit tonight. Current temperature for downtown is 54 degrees, but it's going to be downright freezing for most of the county. We'll go ahead and talk about that after the break.
And up next, how to keep your SDG&E bill from hitting the roof as natural gas prices spike.